Hello again. This is Kelly Borsheim at BorsheimArts.com, and I want to continue this series of Painting Castelvecchio. Now, in this video, I want to respond to some of the questions or comments or requests that I got on my Facebook professional page, and that is to understand more about the thought processes of the artist. Because to be clear, there are a lot of people that paint even better than I do. Of course, I suppose that's subjective. Anybody has their own thing, but it's easier to teach technique than it is thought processes behind something sometimes. But anyway, whether it's easy or not, I'll tell you some things that I'm thinking, so that hopefully you'll find something useful that you can pull out of it for your own creation of works. So when I come back to a painting after I haven't been to it for a while, or even overnight, because a lot of times I need to do things in steps and then sleep on it and think on it, and obviously I can't finish a painting in a day. What I always do is I walk into the room at a distance, I look at the piece and ask myself, does anything jump out at me as good, or more often as bad, or not bad, but something that doesn't appeal to me? Because I kind of don't like the judgment of things, since everything is true. However, I do the look in the back, because what I like to do is whatever bothers me the most is the thing that I'm going to do first. So I call it the worst first. The thing that is the least developed, I need to bring in to match with the other stuff, so that as a whole, each day, I'm bringing this entire painting, no matter how large or small it is, or the sculpture, it's developing as a whole. Instead of, for example, bringing this part here exactly to completion, and then trying to match all these other things to it. It doesn't really work that way. I mean, for some people, I call that the bathtub technique. For example, when you're letting the bathtub water drain out, if you're sitting in a bathtub, you'll see the person's head first, then you'll see their eyes, you'll see their nose. I've seen people actually carve stone in this way. I don't understand how to do it. I need to relate the head to the shoulder, to the leg, to the knee, all this stuff. Anyway, I like to develop something here, because also, if I do this super hyper realismo, for example, realism, that's English, I'm obligated to bring the rest of it to a certain point to work with that. Whereas if I develop the whole thing together, I can choose, do I want to keep this soft, do I want to sharpen this, do I want to pull this up forward, or do I want to pull this? What do I want to do to make my communication stronger? So in this case, I started this painting on board. I like to paint on wood. This particular piece of wood has been treated twice with a rabbit skin glue, gesso vero they call it in Italian, a true gesso. I'm a bit lazy, or maybe overwhelmed would be a kinder word to use, and that is because I do painting and I do sculpture and I market my own work, and then I try to do all these other things. I find it overwhelming to also have to prep canvases, to have to do all kinds of stuff. So I buy these boards pre-prepped at Rigacci. It's an Italian art materials store in Florence, Italy, and they do a great job. I don't have to mix up the rabbit glue, I don't have to buy it and do the chemistry and all this. I buy it with the 2 coats on it and the board. They're beveled in the back, which you probably can't see here, but they fit really nicely and easily into a slender frame, or a heavy one if you like. I like to paint on board. In the beginning, it sucks up a lot of the oil paint, and I feel like, whoa, that really got dry really fast. But afterwards, it's really delicious to paint on, from my point of view. I also paint on canvas and, whatever, but I really enjoy painting on wood. So, after I bought the board, the gesso vero looks white. And so I painted a dark campitura, this color here. You can see it in various places. Campitura, C-A-M-P-I-T-U-R-A, is the Italian word that means field color. Campi being field, and the tura being the color part, I think. But anyway, what the job of the campitura is to give an overall feel to the painting. I think of it more as an emotional thing to do more than a technical thing to do, but it doesn't matter for me. Think about how you like. In this case, I took a photograph of Castelvecchio at night while I was staying up in this house that's above the village, looking down and along the spine of the hill here until you reach the Pieve, which is, Pieve is a name for church, and it must be a special kind of church because Chiesa is the word for church in general. But anyway, this is the Pieve. It's a church that dates to 979 AD, I believe. It's quite cool. And the church in the town is actually older, I was told. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked with the details as I do, but I started off with dark here because I want to have an overall dark feel to the painting. It's nighttime, and I want to keep that mysterious feel. If you want to have a light color painting or a high key painting, if you think of terms of music, high key is going to be your lighter tones. You're not going to have anything that's midway dark or actually dark in the painting. It's called a high key painting. You would have a light thing. I would probably just leave the gesso bare and start painting directly on it. In this case, I want to keep the dark mysterious. Oil paint at some point or another will go translucent. And so you want to keep that in mind. The Campitura helps me keep a dark feel to it. Anyhow, I did a painting once where I painted a figure at a Life Drawing Open Studio in Austin, Texas, and then I glazed enough color over it to hide that. And I made it that this figure here is the dream of the sleeping figure I painted at another session. And I was kind of hoping that the paint will go transparent during the lifetime of the woman who bought the painting. We'll have to see. She's still young yet. Anyway, there's a lot of things you can do with this. Alright, so getting back to my point, the worst first. When I look at this painting, I think, okay, besides the transition of this really, really soft focus and this really, really sharp focus, I don't like that. But I don't have paint on these areas, and I haven't figured out yet what to do with some of these outlying areas. Now, I'm not saying that I have to have paint over everything, because the Campitura, if you want to think about it, is a paint. And if not, it is a tone and it's a color, and it's going to stay on the board, and it's not a problem. So I can leave patches of it here if I want to. That's obviously the artist's choice. However, I have some other decisions that I want to make first. And that is, I don't know if you can see in this original here, but that is an ambulance with the Misericordia. And there are cars up here. I have the photo enlarged here, digitally, because I know I wanted to work in this area tonight. I already made that decision before I started the video. However, on this part of the street, there are little cars and stuff along here. I have to make a decision. Do I want to put cars in here or something modern in here? Now, I have lights, tungsten and fluorescent, and that gives some idea of the time period this comes in because, you know, back when this village was made in 1000 AD or earlier, they probably didn't have two different color of lights. So in that respect, it gives some kind of fun to that. But I still have to make a decision. Do I want to put cars in? Because that obviously pulls it into, you know, at least the last 100 years or so. Or do I want to leave them out and leave it all vague? It could still be for today. It could still be from 1,000 years ago. Whatever. It's a decision I have to make. There's no right or wrong answer. It really depends on what do I want to communicate and how do I best go about doing that. From my point of view, you know, everybody would have a different answer for it, and there are no wrong answers. It's just do what works for you. So anyway, in an earlier video, I said one of the things you want to do is always remember why you chose to paint this scene. And in this case, I like this big circular shape here, caused by rectangles. You see all the straight squares, you know, angular lines creating a circular giant head, I guess. Anyway, I also like this curve here. But the reasons I remembered this scene are this wonderful contrast of the greens and the orange lights, as well as this curve here. So that means that everything that I do, every decision that I make for this painting, really needs to reinforce either this color punch or this curve going back, okay? Part of the reason I made this really, really soft focus and muted like this is because it's in the distance. But I need to have enough of it show up where you see the curve. This is too much in focus, which removes me from this. This area here is more important. This is the subject because it has the big bright colors that I like. And the big bright colors will go throughout the piece a little bit, but they're going to get smaller and less strong because, again, I want everything to reinforce this curve arriving here at my subject matter. So now when I go back, I'm going to look at this and say, well, the ambulance, do I need it to be an ambulance? Maybe not. But look, I have a big white plane there, I have a big white plane there, the light's hitting the roof of this vehicle. What would I put in here if I didn't put an ambulance that would give me, do I want to copy this or do I want to let this play down in dark? Do I want my brush strokes to be super tight the way I have them here, which I feel like is almost a little bit too tight, frankly? Or do I want to make it looser as I get away from my focal point and make it very brushstrokey, as you know, seems to be the contemporary way we're painting now, a lot of people. Because my focus helps you decide what it is I think was the most important thing to do. I'm communicating with you in a visual language. As a visual artist, I work with shapes, tones, lights and darks, and color and chroma, saturation of color, brights or muted color, and that kind of thing. So those are my tools that I work with instead of A, B, C, D, E. And I need to make decisions about what it is I want to do. You can see here this roof from right below where I'm standing, my point of view. Is it important that I have here? No. It's a compositional device that sort of softens this corner here by putting a diagonal here, but also the lines of the roof point in toward my subject. Do you see how convenient nature works for us? It's really a matter of how it constructs things, but there's so many things. These lines go in and these lines go out and different things like that. So right now I need to make decisions on that. Focus and emotion, find the line and have everything else support it. So another thing that I wanted to look at is, it's not too early actually to think about this, because the more you do this, the more you start thinking of a multiple of things at once. And then sort of, I find for myself anyway, as when editing something I've written, I'm thinking of a lot of things the first couple of times I edit it, and then when I get towards the end of the project, I really read the thing once and say, okay, I'm looking for all accent marks, or I'm looking to make sure that I don't start too many sentences with the word I, or I'm looking for this or that or the other, and I'm looking for the music in the paragraph. Does it sound okay, or do I need to rewrite? How many times did I use the same word too close together? So, and you find that when you're trying to proofread everything all at once, you can't do it. So you read once for one thing, another thing for another. So, but as I'm building this up now, it's still the early stage, and I have a lot of different directions that I could choose to go in this painting, and I have to at some point decide what they are. You've probably heard a lot of artists talking about how the work itself or the medium itself, whether it's clay or paint, or stone, each medium tells us sort of what it wants to be, okay? Some of that is probably artsy-fartsy talk, and some of it really isn't. Some of it really is, when you work with anything else, it's a collaboration. And we choose to paint in oils because they have a very different personality from acrylics. Although I know people, some good friends of mine even, who want to paint with acrylics so that your brain thinks that it's an oil. It gives the same quality of translucency and that kind of thing, without the health risks of oil. And other people are so enamored of oil. A lot of people I know from the art schools in Florence, they want to continue with using lead white paint because it gives an effect that they would swear you can't get with anything else. And they will continue to use the cadmiums and all these other things that are poisonous and toxic because, just as a smoker will tell you, we're going to die of something anyway. So justify your poison, I guess, is what that is. But the thing is, each one of those mediums really does have a personality. I like stone to do this, and if I do clay, I want to make more textured pieces that I can get in a casting that I don't get so easily in a stone. So you use these things to your advantage and for what you want to communicate. All right, so while I'm looking at all this, my other thing that I walked in and I saw this and I thought, okay, all of these buildings are too equal in tone. Do you see that? Okay, this is a little lighter here. I spoke earlier about how this is lighter and it goes darker in shadow as the building goes down behind this light here. But really, in the overall scheme of things, this is too close to that. That has no change in plane of it there. This shadow here is almost exactly the same as that. And it's not too far off from this. And it's not even actually too far off. That I made the dark here and the dark here so I know where the corners are. But is it interesting? No. And the thing is, our brain always seeks order for things. That's why we end up not liking things that are just a little off center. Look at this, how I did this. It's not such a great thing. But on the other hand, I didn't put this square here smack dab in the middle of the thing because it kills all movement, okay? Off center, I have some movement here that you can see. But if I had put this curve way up here, started it down here, and ended here, boring. You may not necessarily understand why it's boring, but if you saw this in this shape and another one exactly like this with the cropping a little bit different, you would have been drawn, perhaps, to this. Again, every brain's different. But I want to look at this and say, okay, here's a shadow being cast from this building onto this building. This building is in the face, it has light on it, but as it's going to fall down here and it's going to get less, which I have implied here. And then this goes, but I have to decide, I don't like these being equal. So what does that mean? Am I going to make this darker or lighter? Am I going to make this darker or lighter? Am I going to change only one, or am I going to change a little bit of both? Do I want to relate this to this? And probably this having a light face on it, this shadow will probably be lighter in parts because a shadow is going to be darker closer to where it starts the cast, and as it goes out there's more light bouncing around in it and the shadow gets weaker. So it could be that I'll lighten this, but it could also be that I'll lighten this and I'll darken this. And you may see from a previous video I did, I talked about, I didn't get that angled. You see here, I'm still curving down this way. So I'll need to fix that to get the stones feeling like they're actually going back this way. Do you see? So those are the things that I'm thinking about as I go on with this, and I want to decide what am I going to do with this. Let me go ahead and bring this stuff up if I decide to do it, or if I want to say this is my focal area and this is all going to be the sharp thing. Am I going to get really strokey? Where do I stop painting? Where do I start the transition? How do I start the transition in getting these shapes moving? How do I go from very focused here to less and less and less focused? This is definitely wrong compared to that. I say wrong, but it's not a smooth transition. Super soft, super focused, not so good. So those are the things I'll be thinking about as I develop this painting. And in the meantime, part of my brain will be wondering, how do I want to dress this area of the olive groves in here? But I'm jumping ahead of myself as I do. It's just, as I go along, I ask myself again these same questions. Worst first, what's the focus? What's the emotion? What are the relationships that I want to show? And everything needs to support that. If I find myself drifting, I can either ask myself, has something happened in the painting to make me change and go, oh, that's actually a better idea than the one I started with. Let me now stop my other idea and start this other one. Or would it be smarter to say, brilliant idea, save it for the next piece? It really depends probably on at what point that idea would happen or would change and how far along I was with the painting. And if I liked what I had done up to that point, I might say, well, I don't want to lose this either because I enjoy this as well. Let me go do another one with a different idea. So I hope you enjoyed a little bit of this thought process and gave you stuff to consider in your own work, or even when you're just viewing a painting, and you know, see what you bring to the table. Because a lot of times the stuff that I see people saying that oh, the artist thought this and that, I'm thinking, really? I doubt it, but you know, I can't speak for another person's brain. So anyway, thank you again. This is Kelly Borsheim. If you would like to see more of my paintings, I would really enjoy it if you went to my site, BorsheimArts.com, and subscribe to my newsletter if you like. Subscribe to this channel if you like. Put a like on the video, share it with your friends, you know, all that kind of stuff to help me out here, and give me feedback on something else that you'd like to know about, or if you have any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks. Ciao for now. Ciao, ciao.